In this lesson, we'll use splines once again to create the fan blades. So we want to create some blades inside this area, right in here. And so let's use splines once again to do that. This time, instead of drawing out a rectangle, we'll draw out our spline ourselves. So let's go into the left-hand view here. We'll use a line spline. And here we're going to be able to just click and create our spline. So let's start by creating it right inside this area. And I'm going to start from the profile. We'll just create the profile of our spline. So we'll start here, kind of click right in here. And again, you can create something that is kind of custom, but I'm just going to create something that's a little bit of an interesting shape here. So I'll add a little bit of curve in there, and then let's close it off. I'm going to click a point right up in here, click on the initial point, and it's going to ask me if I want to close the spline. Let's say yes, I do. Now we can go to our modify panel and modify our points. So we can take those points, move them around. Okay, maybe pull that in a little bit. If the curve's not exactly what we want, we can change the tangent handles of that. We can go ahead and pull this point in a little bit. Okay, if we want to change that, right now it's set to a corner. If we want it to be a Bezier corner, we can kind of change that. Okay, so a lot of different things that we can do here. Now we want to add geometry to this, so we will use our extrude once again, our extrude modifier. So we'll go to our modifier list. Let's go to the ease, go to extrude, and for the amount, maybe it's a little bit less than the piece on the top, maybe something like that. Now we want to create again a big series of these around this radius of this around this around the engine here, much like we did here, but we want a larger number of these. Now we could go ahead and do the same thing as far as rotating and duplicating those, but we can also use something called an array. So to use this, I'm going to again choose to use the working pivot, and with this object selected, we'll simply go to Tools, Array. Now let me actually cancel out of this and move over so we can kind of see a little bit more what's going on here. So again, open up our array. Okay, and so we're using the working pivot, and now we have some sections here. We have incremental transform, so we have move, rotate, we have scale. So we're going to be using the incremental values here. The only one we're really concerned about is the rotation, because we're not going to be moving these or scaling them. No, we're only going to be rotating them, and then also the count. So we want them to rotate around in this direction. So I'm going to add a rotation here, and let's just add in a 30-degree rotation. Let's preview and see what that looks like. So right now, each of these is rotating 30 degrees, and there are 10 of them. Okay, so you can see here the cumulative value here for our rotation is 300 degrees. So our goal is to space these out so that they encompass 360 degrees. So depending on how far apart or how close you want them, we can go maybe 10 degrees. Well, let's start with actually 5 degrees. Okay, and so you can see how close those are. So in order to fill up, and you can see it only is going 110 degrees, in order to fill that up, we can go ahead and bring that up, and it's actually going to be 72. So this doesn't count, or it actually does include the initial copy. So it's not like you're making 35 or 71 additional copies. You're actually including this in the number for the array. Now these might be a little bit too close. So what we can do is bump the angle value, or the rotation value here. So we can take that to 10, and in this case we only need 36 copies, and that will encompass 360 degrees. So that gives us all of the copies we need all the way around here, and we're able to see this using our preview. It's telling us the total number of objects here in our array. Okay, and we can make those instances, we can make those just regular copies, and so forth. So the array is a really powerful way to work. If you wanted to, for instance, to get smaller or larger as they went along the array, you could change the amount here in the scale. If you wanted to move, set that back to 100. If you wanted to, for instance, move them as they come out, you can do that as well. So you can get a lot of really interesting effects by using our array. We're using it for something simple, but I encourage you to kind of experiment a little bit and see what kind of shapes that you can create from this. Now with that array built, we can also start to add in some geometry here in the center. So let's go back to our geometry, and here we can start to add maybe a cylinder. So we'll go ahead and add a cylinder. Let's use our keyboard entry to just add it in the center. Okay. Kind of move it right over here. Now I want to rotate this, so I want to make sure I turn off the working pivot. And I'll rotate this minus 90 degrees. And now let's change some of our parameters. So we'll change the radius until it's right inside those blades. Let's change the height. Okay. Make that radius maybe a bit smaller. And we'll move it back inside there. Turning on our edged faces will give us a better view of what that actually looks like there. So if we want to round this off, and let's say that we do, we can take the height segments down. Okay, so we don't need all of those height segments. All right, so we can start to modify this, and one of the ways we can do this is just to add some cap segments here. Okay, let's say we want this to be a little bit more pointy. So let's go ahead and convert this to an editable poly. And now we can start to move some of these out. So we can maybe take our middle vertex and pull that out. Okay, we can start to take the edges that we have here. So selecting that loop, pulling that out in the Y. Do the same thing here and pull that out. And we can start to get kind of a smoother look there. Okay, select that and can maybe scale that down. Get more of a kind of our cone shape, and then we can scale this whole thing up if we want to and modify that. So, and then you can see that line kind of right there, so I'm just going to smooth those normals. You can see there with the edge faces and without. And so we're starting to get some additional detail here on our engine. We've got these large pieces on the exterior, we've got the fan blades, we've got some of these sharp pieces here, just starting to build this all together. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is to look at building the back of the engine. So we've got just kind of this front shell built. Let's take a look at how we can start to build the back of the engine. We'll do that using a NURBS curve. So let's take a look at that next.